99.98% of the Great Pyramid of Giza has never been touched by human hands. Not explored, not mapped, not entered, not once in 4,500 years. Everyone assumes we've seen everything inside this monument. We haven't. Not even close. And what modern instruments have found hiding inside its 6 million tons of stone is stranger than any theory built to explain it away. The Great Pyramid sits on the Giza Plateau just southwest of Cairo, and when it was completed around 2560 BCE, it stood 146 meters tall, the tallest human-made structure on Earth, a record it held for almost 4,000 years. It's built from roughly 2.3 million blocks, some weighing 2.5 tons, others, the granite beams above the king's chamber, weighing as much as 80 tons. Quarried in Aswan, 800 kilometers away, then floated down the Nile and hauled into place, some of them lifted more than 60 meters off the ground. The precision is what stops researchers cold. The four sides of the base are level to within about 2 centimeters, across a 230-meter span. When the Egyptologist Flinders Petrie measured the casing stones back in the 1880s, he found gaps between blocks averaging 0.5 millimeter, tighter than a sheet of paper. And the whole structure is oriented to true north within a few arc minutes of accuracy. For a civilization working without modern tools, that's a level of engineering control that still gets studied today. And it's the reason the pyramid has never stopped attracting serious researchers, not just tourists. The textbook explanation is straightforward on paper. Ramps, copper tools, and a rotating workforce, likely in the tens of thousands. Over roughly 2 decades, archaeological digs near the plateau have backed up parts of this picture. Excavations uncovered a workers' village with bakeries, breweries, and medical facilities, suggesting an organized, fed, and cared-for labor force rather than slaves, which was the old assumption for most of the 20th century. But the how of the heavy lifting is still debated among Egyptologists themselves. Straight ramps would have needed to stretch over 1 kilometer to reach the upper courses at a workable incline. Spiral ramps wrapping the exterior run into their own problems tracking corners. Some researchers argue for internal spiral ramps, others for a combination of levers and sledges on wetted sand, a technique the Egyptians are actually shown using in tomb paintings for moving large statues. No single theory accounts for every block, especially the 80-ton granite beams lifted high above ground level. This isn't a fringe mystery, it's an open engineering question that professional Egyptologists actively research and argue about at conferences today. Here's where it gets genuinely strange. In 2015, a team called Scan Pyramids pointed infrared cameras at the pyramid's eastern face at sunrise and sunset, tracking how each block heated and cooled. Most limestone blocks nearby varied in temperature by a fraction of a degree. One cluster of blocks was 6 degrees warmer than everything around it, a signature that usually means there's a hollow space behind the stone, not solid rock. 2 years later, physicist Kunihiro Morishima and his team at Nagoya University placed muon detectors, instruments that track cosmic particles constantly raining down from space, inside the Queen's chamber. Dense material slows those particles down. Empty space lets them pass through faster. Track enough particles over months, and you can effectively build an X-ray of a structure from the inside without drilling a single hole. After months of data collection, 3 separate detection methods all pointed to the same conclusion: a void at least 30 meters long, sitting directly above the Grand Gallery. Roughly the size of a plane cabin, sealed since the day the pyramid was finished. Then in 2023, French physicist Sébastien Poquerot and his team found a second hidden space, a 9-meter corridor behind the chevron stones on the pyramid's north face, roughly 2 meters by 2 meters with a vaulted ceiling. They confirmed it with a 6-millimeter endoscope threaded through a small gap between blocks, capturing the first images of that space in 4,500 years. Nobody knows what either space was built for. No inscriptions, no artifacts recovered, just empty sealed stone. The King's Chamber is the only room in the entire pyramid built from pink Aswan granite, a stone dense with quartz. Quartz has a property called piezoelectricity. It generates a small electrical charge under pressure or vibration. Whether the builders understood or intended that property is genuinely unknown and heavily debated, but what is measurable is this. The chamber's dimensions produce a resonant frequency around 117 Hz, and the granite sarcophagus inside, found empty, with no evidence a body was ever placed inside it, sits close to the point in the room where that resonance is strongest. Add to that 4 narrow shafts cutting through the pyramid's body, long labeled air shafts in older textbooks. Acoustic researcher Tom Danley recorded infrasound, frequencies below what the human ear can consciously hear, moving through them when wind crosses the openings. The Queen's Chamber pair are sealed at both ends with limestone blocks and copper fittings, which raises an obvious question. A sealed shaft doesn't ventilate anything. Whatever function they served, plain airflow for workers doesn't fully explain the design. In 1964, astronomer Alexander Badawi and astrophysicist Virginia Trimble calculated the angles of those shafts against the ancient sky. The southern shaft from the King's Chamber lined up with Orion's belt. The southern shaft from the Queen's Chamber lined up with Sirius, both exactly where those stars sat around 2500 BCE, matching star charts for that specific era rather than any other point in history. And the precision of the whole plateau tells its own story. In 2000, Cambridge Egyptologist Kate Spence studied how each pyramid's north alignment drifted depending on when it was built, based on the slow multi-century wobble of Earth's rotational axis. The pattern she found runs almost backwards from what you'd expect from a civilization refining its methods over time. The Great Pyramid, the oldest of the 3 at Giza, is the most precisely aligned of them all, within about 3.4 arcminutes of true north. Khafra's pyramid, built a generation later, drifts to about 6 arcminutes. Menkaur's drifts past 12. Go back further, to Sneferu's earlier pyramids at Dashur and Meidum, and the errors run even larger. The sharpest alignment in the entire multi-century history of Egyptian pyramid building belongs to the very first large-scale pyramid ever finished. Divide the pyramid's base perimeter by twice its height, and you land close to pi. Compare the slant height to half the base width, and you land close to the golden ratio. Historians and mathematicians still debate whether these were deliberate design choices or a natural byproduct of how the builders set out their proportions using simple sect or slope, ratios common in Egyptian architecture. But the numbers are there regardless of intent, sitting inside 6 million tons of stone accurate to a fraction of a percent, and they've held up under 2 centuries of remeasurement, with instruments the original builders never had. It's worth being clear about something here. None of this means the pyramid wasn't a tomb. The evidence for that is solid. Khufu's name appears in quarry marks inside the relieving chambers above the King's Chamber, painted by the work crews who hauled the stone. A full workers' village and cemetery have been excavated near the plateau, with burial customs matching Old Kingdom Egyptian practice, not some undiscovered outside culture. Online, you'll find claims that the pyramid was built by a lost advanced civilization or that it functioned as some kind of ancient power plant. Mainstream Egyptology rejects both ideas, and for good reason. There's no archaeological, geological, or textual evidence supporting them, and they tend to erase the very real, very human achievement of the people who actually built it. The genuine mystery here isn't who built the pyramid, it's how a Bronze Age civilization, working at the very start of large-scale, monumental construction, hit a level of precision that took thousands of years for anyone else to match, and why so much of what they built still doesn't have a fully agreed-upon purpose. 2 centuries of scans, surveys, and independent research teams, and the Great Pyramid still hasn't run out of secrets. The voids are real. The resonance is real. The alignment is real. What none of it fully explains is why a civilization at the dawn of recorded history built something this precise, sealed most of it away, and never left behind a written record of why. If you want more real mysteries, fact-checked and explained, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.